Hi guys, welcome to the Parrot Teacher. David here, joined by Baby Olive, and today we're going to be talking about toxic foods that you shouldn't feed your parrot. Now I'm going to talk about different categories. We're going to talk about sort of human junk foods, we're going to talk about drinks, we're going to talk about vegetables and fruit, and also some foods that are okay in moderation as well, some myth busting as well. So we're going to cover this and hopefully we'll all learn something. Now this isn't an exhaustive list by any means. If I was to do that, this video would probably be an hour long. I'm just trying to cover the most common toxic foods that should be avoided at all costs, and also talk a little bit about, some of the nicer ones, because again, it is just down to common sense for a lot of foods. You can sort of assess them yourself and think, well hang on, is that really that good for my parrot? I thought I'd start off with veggies and fruit that you should be avoiding, and the top sort of list for these are onions, no. Rhubarb is no good either as a root, and neither is garlic. These things are not good for your parrots at all and will be toxic to them if fed to them. You should also avoid avocado because there have been some studies that prove that in large quantities that can be highly toxic. So it's just best to be avoided. With regards to fruits, you want to be avoiding feeding any fruit pits or stones to your parrot. It may be tempting because they're kind of like seeds, but these are not for your parrots. These should be avoided and they should be removed if you're going to give them any sort of fruit, because they can be toxic and can be harmful to your parrot's digestive system. They're just not very good and just not really worth feeding anyway, because there's so many good things you can give them. Now, these aren't technically a vegetable, they're more a legume, but I thought I'd include them in there as well, and that's peanuts. And peanuts are very commonly fed to parrots. They are no good for parrots at all. You do not want to be feeding your parrot any sort of peanuts. Commonly called monkey nuts as well. The shells can harbour bacteria, mould, fungus, so you just want to be avoiding it. Do not give your parrots peanuts. I know you see them in some feed mixes, but they are not good for your parrot and they will cause harm if fed over a long period. So let's move on to drinks, commonly human drinks. The first one I want to talk about is milk. Because it's dairy, parrots can't digest it, so you do not want to be giving your parrot any milk. Similarly with alcohol, you just can't imagine how a tiny little beak like this is going to cope with any alcohol. She's getting very excited talking about alcohol, so let's pop that back down and have a little relax again. So alcohol is a no-go for parrots at all. It's common sense really. Similarly with coffee, you can imagine what coffee in large quantities does to humans, and we are massive compared to most parrots. It is no good for parrots at all. Just do not give it to your parrot. Finally, fizzy drinks, human fizzy drinks. We're talking about cola, which obviously has caffeine in it as well. Talking about all those lovely fizzy drinks with loads of E numbers in it, loads of sort of very nice things for us with nice flavour, but very bad for your parrots. It's just, again, just do not give your parrot fizzy drinks, because all of those chemicals in there will cause them harm. They're not designed to deal with it. Our bodies can cope because we are very big, and a lot of these drinks have been tested on various sort of humans, I guess, laboratory humans, to see if they will actually do anything to our human body. For parrots, that's not been done. They need to be avoided. Now we've covered vegetables, fruits and drinks, let's move on to human foods in general. So let's start with dairy. Now parrots lack the human enzyme lactase to digest dairy. They cannot digest it, so if you feed them dairy, they're not digesting that, so you can only imagine what it's doing to their digestive system. Funnily enough, there are some humans who are lactose intolerant who also can't really digest dairy, yet, that's okay for them to avoid it, yet we still give it to our parrots sometimes. Do not give your parrot any dairy. Similarly, for human junk foods, like with the previous points, you can only imagine what a human junk food will do to your parrot's insides. They're not designed to eat that sort of foods, they just can't deal with it. So do avoid it. We're talking about burgers, pizza, processed foods, all sorts of they're not very good for us, so you can only imagine what they're like for your parrot. I'd also like to mention chocolate. That's no good for your parrot, so do avoid that. Even a little bit can cause a lot of harm. And then as well, uncooked soup beans. Now people sort of think that beans are generally good for your parrot, and in many cases there are, but you need to be careful what ones you're using for sprouting, soaking or feeding raw, because they do have different effects based on their different states. So do not give your parrot uncooked soup beans ever, because they can be very harmful. I've talked about a lot of foods that should not be fed at all costs, but I wanted to talk about some foods where there's a bit of myth busting that needs to be done. These foods are generally thought of as toxic, but they're not actually that bad, and I want to talk a bit about them. So let's start with tomatoes. Now with tomatoes, I've put that first on the list because their leaves and the stems are toxic. You do not want to be giving any of the leaves or stems to your parrots. Those are toxic. And obviously that means if you do want to feed a tomato, you need to wash it thoroughly. However, the tomato itself, in moderation, is actually okay. You do not want to be giving large quantities of any of these foods I'm talking about now, but in moderation it's okay. So a little bit of tomato is not actually harmful for your parrot, and there are many people who do feed small quantities of it, and it's perfectly fine. And just to reiterate, all of these foods I'm talking about in myth busting are in small quantities. Any large quantities could potentially be bad, but again, like with us, if we have certain things in moderation, it's okay. It's the same for our parrots. Now, next one is mushrooms. Now, mushrooms are traditionally thought of to be exceptionally toxic for parrots. However, it's been proven now, and in various studies, and Dr Jason Crean talks about this as well, that mushrooms in very small quantities are actually beneficial. So if you do want to provide mushrooms, I'd suggest you go to Jason's group on Facebook, which I'll leave a link in the description for, where the topic's discussed more, because again, it's one of those long topics and I don't have too much time to go into in a quick video. And the last sort of myth busting thing I want to talk about is citrus, and specifically oranges, little tangerines, that sort of thing. These are traditionally thought of to be highly toxic. However, they aren't. People talk about the acidity levels in them, and I can understand that because too high acidity level can damage the crop. However, there's actually more acid in a peach than there is in an orange, and peaches are fed to parrots occasionally. So it's actually okay to give them a bit of diluted orange juice, and I mean fresh orange juice that's diluted quite heavily, a bit of water, or to give them a little bit of orange or tangerine. These are completely okay. It's just when, again, it's done in large quantities and without any sort of thought for how big the parrot is. Now, I've talked about these. There are probably plenty more where there are borderline, where there's new sort of studies being done, more research on these foods. However, I don't want to give any information that may cause people to accidentally feed too much. So those are the ones I will cover in this myth busting. If there's any more, I would suggest actually going to Jason's group, because he's much better qualified to give expert advice on other foods you may be a bit unsure of. So guys, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you found it useful. If there's any foods you want to ask me about specifically, please feel free to leave a comment down below. I'll get back to you with an answer. And in the meantime, from me and a very excited baby Olive, who's hopefully going to wave goodbye to you all. Wave? Wave? Good girl. Take care and have a really, really good day.